And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba and the BatFlip, episode 102. Actually, I didn't fix that number on the YouTube screen. There's episode 102 of Bubba and the BatFlip. Hope everybody had a great couple weeks off as we took a little breather from the show. But we're going to start back up in action here, reviewing 2021 positions before we really dig in. Let ADP go for about a month, and then we'll have some fun with that because drafts are blowing and going, and we'll start previewing stuff there, hoping the season starts on time. We'll go at that point there. But until then, you can check me on Twitter at BDentric, and my co-host is always on Twitter at BatFlipCrazy. Toby, how are we doing, my friend?
Doing well, Bubba. It's nice to get back together again. We've been away for a couple weeks here, but yeah, it's exciting to be here, and it's nice to see some drafts actually happening. You know, seeing those multicolored draft boards from NFBC populating the timeline. I have not partaken in any yet. I don't plan to for a little while. Just trying to take it a little bit easy this off season, but yeah, it's exciting I'm starting to get the juices flowing. You know, I'm starting to listen to podcasts again, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's good. I'm in my first NFC 50 deal, and it's fun. It's an eye opener on the whole situation. Let's put it that way. It's a whole different animal, to say the least, to see how things are going. But it's kind of similar to what we did in Arizona. A lot of relief pitcher goofiness, a lot of deep pitchers. So we'll see how that keeps going as the season goes along. But we'll have plenty of time to talk about all that good stuff as well. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to try to do catchers, first base, and second base. We'll see where the discussion takes us. But the idea is to go over the Razzball player rater, go over like the top 10 to 20 players at each position, talk about players that kind of stood out and why. And we're doing it based on dollar values by the end of the season for Razzball. So if you want to go back and look at what we were talking about, that's what it's going to be. There's ADP out there. There's been about 15 total drafts, DCs, NFBC 50s. If you want to look at ADP, you can separate them, obviously, and go from there. But we'll just kind of recap things for a little bit here and have some fun. So like I said, we'll start at the catcher's position because why not? One of the best players, our two best players in baseball, Toby, play catcher. So we might as well talk about
the
them
best.
first.
I'm wearing my Phillies hat for a reason tonight.
Oh, it's a big show then. Big show because Salvi Perez jumped him this year, and rightfully so. He earned it. Let's put it that way. He earned it this year. He made over $48 in value, according to Razzball, which is bonkers but accurate because Salvi nearly hit 50 home runs this year. He is a freak. We talked about it time and time again in the past, Toby, that what elevated him in drafts is because he played 161 games at catcher. Well, not at catcher, but he played 161 games because he DHs catchers, the works. And that is, to get a catcher to get 665 at-bats, Toby, is next to just impossible in baseball these days. Like, I'm writing catchers for the Black Book that comes out in the middle of December, and it's not fun to write to begin with. And second, after about, I'll be nice and say 10 guys. It's probably not even 10. You start looking at the stats from last year, the amount of catchers that caught less than 100 games or played less than 100 games is insane. So the fact you got a 161, like there's some two-catcher leagues, Toby, that didn't combine for 161 games at catcher. So what's your thoughts on Salvi? Because I can keep talking about him, but he's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, he's obviously going to go a lot higher up than he did this past year. But I think the differentiator is what you mentioned, the plate appearances. I think that's so critical, and it's going to be really important, I think, heading into next year and thinking about the catcher position will be plate appearances. Because if the DH, if after collective bargaining, the DH comes in the NL, it's going to impact, I think, some of the top catchers that we'll be talking about briefly tonight. Salvi won't be one of them. I mean, in some respects, compared to the pack, he will lose a little bit of value only because some other catchers like JTR, and potentially Will Smith and some others will probably catch up a little bit in narrowing the plate appearance gap. So that's just one thing to be mindful of. But I mean, the fact he plays like every single day is just a remarkable it's just a remarkable thing, a credit to him. He now has a season and a half of just unbelievably strong StatCast metrics, batted ball quality metrics. So, I drafted him in the one draft that I've done, I think in the third round, I want to say. And early third round, or Yeah, early third, no, middle third round, I think actually.
Yeah.
And so yeah, there's nothing really I'm adding to the equation here, just that he's great. I love him.
Yeah, no, he's amazing. There's not a whole lot more to add. Like Steamer's got him projected for another 600 plus at bats, 37 home runs, 261. Honestly, I think that's kind of realistic. I'd say 30 to 35 homers is probably a safe bet if he runs hot again. 40 plus. I think we're all on realization he's not going to hit 48 again. Like it'd be very, very surprising because it's nice he plays every day, but to play catcher and not get banged up enough to need a few days off is pretty impressive. Like I don't care who you are, you usually do. So we'll see how he plays out, but still, he's a beast. He's going to play probably more than anybody outside of a guy in Philadelphia we may talk about. So it's pretty impressive what he did this last year. All right, the next guy, no newbie to this show, JTR, Toby's guy. So I won't say too much, but I will say he finished second on the player rater at catcher, earning $21, which was $27. He had 27.50 less than Salvador. That's how crazy Salvi's season was. That's all I could say. He was that astronomically good, but JTR was still good. He got banged up, still played 134 games. Toby, he stole 13 bases at catcher. So talk to me about JTR.
He did, yeah. Don't sell that man short. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean JTR. I think he's the same guy that he has always, that he's kind of always been, and I think there's going to be a slight discount at least compared to the last 2 years. I think heading into this year, his ADP right now is 59 so far in the NFBC, and you have to think that people are a little bit more prone to picking catchers early in DC formats just because streaming isn't necessarily as viable of an option. So I think that's interesting. And yeah, I mean, he's kind of the guy that he always is. He looks exactly the same, maybe slightly elevated strikeout rate. The plate discipline wasn't as strong as it's been in some seasons, but he's still making a bunch of contact. The hard contact's good. The quality of contact metrics, 8.6 barrel rate, is up there with it's the best he's had outside of the shortened season in 2020, where it's easier to do that over a small sample. So, and to consider the fact that he was beat up a little bit, I think he spent a little 10 days on the IL, or maybe a little bit longer than that. So again, I think he's primed to be a beautiful, beautiful guy.
Yeah, I think he's gonna be a good value. He's kind of going around where Salvi used to go, maybe a little earlier than where Salvi used to go as that catcher too. But he's gonna steal bags, which Salvi won't do. Like we said, all catchers usually get banged up at some point in time. Might not be a serious injury, but it's just the nature of the beast. And I remember he even played through an injury at one time. I remember we were talking about it because his production was so bad. There's like his wrist or his hand or something. And he started the year slow because he hurt his hand in spring training. So he had a combo of things going on throughout the season. So to still have 17 home runs and steal 13 bags and do what he did, they played him at first base a little bit. They DH'd him a little bit, which is nice because when Hoskins went down, shows the versatility of Real Muto. So if he's
versatile.
He's a Swiss Army knife. Like it's simple, but it just shows if he stays healthy, kind of like Salvi did, he's probably playing 155 plus games pretty easily. So that's what makes him elite because of those stolen bases. Which this time next year we could probably easily. No one would be shocked, at least not on this show, if he's the catcher one over Salvi Perez. Like not a chance. Like he's that good. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Obviously, he's like we'll talk about it as we go deeper at catcher, but the DH will help a lot of these guys. It won't help as many as I think people are thinking, though. Like there's still like a group of guys that aren't going to take a massive jump. And we'll start with the next guy here. And Will Smith, he finished third at $20.50, just below JTR. He managed to play in 130 games, hit 25 home runs, hit 258, all outstanding. There was questions going into the season because even Dave Roberts, good old Dave Roberts, Austin Barnes and Will Smith, they're going to split time. They're going to do this, that. Will Smith was the guy in the end. And he's one of the guys that everyone was saying that there was a DH, it'd be big, but it wasn't as big as people thought because the Dodgers just used the DH to give guys rest. It wasn't like the Phillies or the Royals where it's like, okay, every fourth or fifth day our catcher is going to DH, like guaranteed. So now he's in the lineup. Will Smith would get days off. That's just how it worked. So like Barnes would catch and Smith wouldn't DH because Muncy's DHing today or something, and that's how it would work there. Still think he's great. He had a great year. He finished catcher 3. Any thoughts on Will Smith?
Yeah, I think he's super solid. I mean, he got 500 plate appearances last year, and if they add the DH, I mean, yeah, he won't play there like all the time, but he'll get some plate appearances as a DH as well, I think. Which, you know, again, getting 500 plate appearances, that's kind of your goal for most catchers. If you're not in kind of the JTR and Salvi Perez window, he's just remarkably consistent. I mean, if you're looking for a guy who I think is going to be really good, I mean, there's everything's beautiful in Will Smith's profile. Like his plate discipline is elite. He makes a ton of contact. He hits the ball in the air, and I think that's one thing that people should be a little bit wary of, or not wary of, but like just cognizant of. Is you may look at his 274 BABIP and say, oh, well, you know, maybe there's some positive regression due his way, but he's 276 for his career. He hits the ball in the air an absolute ton, which is always going to limit the batting average upside. You know, he had a 46.3% fly ball rate last year, a 31.5% ground ball rate. So, you know, among the league leaders in terms of low ground ball rate. So I think he's so solid. He's in such a good situation. I know we have a lot of questions about him from listeners, but I just think he's a really solid pick all around. And there's upside there for sure. A little bit of downside on the batting average if that BABIP luck trends maybe the other way. But just really solid all around player.
Yeah, I don't have anything really bad to say about Will Smith.
Except he's a Dodger, right? I
yeah,
mean, that's
but
bad.
like that's bad. It is bad. But I think people should know by now that I'm a lot of tongue in cheek with the Dodgers, because if they listen to any of the shows that we do or I do, I've confessed that like I like too many of these guys now. It's hard to hate the Dodgers. Will Smith's another one of them. It's a young kid that can play, and he's like on that borderline because you said you need like 500. Like you're shooting for 500 at bats. That's what you want from your catcher. Almost all the guys below this, it starts to get a little shakier. Like there's a couple we'll talk about that are pretty close, but it starts dropping pretty quickly after this point. It's like when I said there's like 10 guys I was being kind of nice, there's maybe 10 guys that might get you like 350 or more. Like it drops pretty quick at a certain point. This is kind of the spot. So it's like, do you want to go catch it early? And we'll talk about this in the preview podcast. But if you want to go catch it early, these are the guys you're gonna have to go for. And they're all going to the top 180p right now. So
of course you want to go catch it early, Bubba. There's only one way to roll.
Yes, catchers, pitchers, rock and roll, Toby. And hey, Pete, we joke about it tongue in cheek sometimes, but Toby wins. So if he doesn't win the league, he still wins money.
Time.
I said that's why I said if he doesn't win the league, he still wins money. He finishes in the money more often than not. So there's a lot to like there.
You're embarrassing me, Bubba.
No, I just speak the truth because you are that good. Next up, we're just going to skip him, but I'm going to say his name because he deserves it. He's the comeback player of the year for the second time.
Name, yeah.
Buster Posey, amazing season. It sucks as a Giants fan that he won't be playing anymore, but I'm so happy he went out the way he did. Like I wish more players could. I like the fact he played for one team. It was awesome. He went on his terms.
It was your team. That helps.
Yeah, that helps a ton. But it was on his terms. He's happy. He's going to be with his family. He's going to be a heck of a coach someday when he takes, a few years off to be with the family and then realizes, okay, I can go do this. It's gonna be cool. But I'm pretty happy for him to move on. Had a heck of a season. So that was pretty cool. All right. Now it gets fun because we're going in order of the Razzball Raider, which when you start looking at ADP, things get different. But Mike Zunino finished 5th. He's currently the 15 catcher going off the board around pick 260. But Mike Zunino, in 375 plate appearances, Toby, 33 home runs. I will say it's impressive he only had 62 RBIs in 33 home runs, and he hit 216. But that's what you're getting from Zunino. Not a big average. But if he can get you 30-plus home runs, it's interesting.
Yeah, and I mean, when you think about like the overall context, the 216. I mean, the 216 is awful. Let's be honest. Yep. But the 216 for this year is actually like his best batting average in 3 seasons, right? Mm-hmm. But it's also like you peg it to the league average, and he's moving even closer toward what you need. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean you target him. I think some of the things that jump out at me: 30.3% home run per fly ball rate, which is much higher than any season he's had previously.
In a tough ballpark, though. That's the funny part.
In a tough ballpark and with a slightly deflated ball.
True.
But, at the same time, he also had the highest barrel rate of his career at 24.3% by close to 9%. And so, and his max exit velo was the highest it's ever been at 117.3. So maybe they've figured something out. I think the challenge is there's just so much downside. There's just so much downside where he's going. Although, his ADP is 273 right now in draft and holds. So it's not horrible. So maybe I should say there's upside, but I think the downside is, the reason his batting average was higher was largely because they were home runs, right? He's hitting a ton of fly balls, 54% fly ball rate, which is just insanely high. And so those are going to be outs if they're not home runs. So if that home run per fly ball regresses to the mean, you're not just going to be talking about him going from 33 home runs to 25 home runs or 20 home runs. You're going to be talking about him in the single digits in terms of, well, not single digits, but 100s in terms of batting averages pretty quickly there. And so for that reason, I would stay away from him just because I think there's too much downside there with the batting average, especially if you're relying on him like in a draft champions, as opposed to, season long where maybe you can mix and match him with a higher batting average catcher to benefit your squad. But I can't believe he hit 33 home runs. I had no idea until I was looking just now. It's kind of crazy and pretty impressive power, just the barrel rate and everything like that.
That's what's been funny about it, like the power's always like been there. We've never 33, maybe not, but we knew he was like a powerful guy, but strikeouts and lack of contact and this and that. Be like, look at his BABIP. He was like a 230-ish BABIP this year. Last 2 years have been really bad, but prior to that, it's like a 250 plus guy. And it's like maybe he started showing strides this year after 2 bad years. And if he keeps creeping the right way, maybe he starts hitting like 225 every year. It hits 25 home runs. There's worse catchers, so it's definitely volatile and risky, 100%. Like I have not drafted him yet in my drafts. I've passed on him completely. I'm intrigued. I'm very intrigued at where he's going in drafts, though, because at that point in the catcher's world, it's you got Christian Vasquez, Sean Murphy's, Omar Narvaez, Gary Sanchez is right there. There's either guys that don't have a lot of power or guys like Gary Sanchez. So you pick your poison, but it's going to be interesting to see where that all lands. All right, the next catcher off the board, we're going to skip one because he's not going to be catcher eligible this year. We go to Yasmani Grandal. I forgot to mention Zunino made $13 last year after Will Smith's $20.5. We go to Grandal, who made $9.80. So quite the drop off there. We do have to remember Grandal missed a ton of time with the knee injury. Still played in 93 games for 375 at bats because he plays first base. He DHs. That's one reason why we liked him going into last year into Chicago. Still managed 23 home runs. And he finished the season very, very well, hitting 240 overall on the season, walking a ton. So I'm a huge Grandal fan. I already grabbed him in my NFBC 50 that I just did. I love Grandal this year. If you can't get one of the big three, zero problem settling on Grandal.
Yeah, I think Grandal is wonderful. I mean, I think he's just an incredible player. And the consistency is what's remarkable to me, because I think in our heads, we're thinking like, oh, Grandal, he's great, better in OBP than average, which is obviously the case. I mean, in OBP, he's absolutely phenomenal, which I know because I always have him in OBP. But the batting average, let me read you his batting average the last 5 seasons: 240, 230, 246, 241, 247. Like, he's hitting in the 240s, and it's been weird how he's gotten there, right? He hit like 160 in the first half last year, and then he hit like 3 million. That's what my 4-year-old would say. He hit like 3 million in the second half of the season, and he ends up in a similar spot. And sometimes that's how the production works, right? That's how things happen. But you're talking about a guy who, like you mentioned before, he was injured a lot of last season. He's going to get a ton of plate appearances. He's hitting for power. He's getting on base and scoring a lot of runs in the middle of that lineup. He's going to get a lot of RBI in a good lineup as well. He's in a division that has a little bit of suspect pitching and suspect teams in general. So contextually, the environment is fantastic for him. And your only concern really, I mean, outside of lack of speed, right? He's like the slowest guy in baseball, but his batting average. And he's been so consistent, you can kind of plan on it, right? you can be like, I mean, it's okay to have a guy who hits 240 on your team. Like, we all have guys who hit 240. And like, that was like my batting average in some leagues for my entire team last year. So I think he's very playable in all formats. And I think he's a fantastic player as well. Let me just check something really quick, because I feel like his quality of contact metrics. So he had his highest max exit velocity since 2015. He had his highest barrel rate ever, highest hard hit rate ever, StatCast wise. His average exit velocity was 93 miles per hour. And we just know how damn good his plate discipline is. I mean, it's so good. I mean, watching his at-bats is kind of fun, because it's like a battle between him and the umpire, where it's like he takes a pitch, and when he takes a pitch, he's like, that's a ball. That's a ball.
Well, it's one of the closest things you've seen since like Barry Bonds. Like, he knows the strike zone so well. He's like, this is where it's at.
It's great. Yeah. So yeah, I think he's great. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he's a beast, absolute beast. Another guy that tied him at $9.80 as well was Wilson Contreras of the Cubs. He had about another 130 at bats than Contreras. Doesn't walk nearly as much, 21 homers, but he did get 5 steals, which is nice. He's going to be on that Cubs team though. Going to be interesting. That'll be something we can definitely dig into more later. But in 2021, he got the job done. It just felt like it was an underwhelming season to me.
Yeah. I mean, he got the job done. I didn't mind having him. It was definitely up and downs there for a while. Yeah. But, when you look at it, 21 home runs, the 5 stolen bases, like you mentioned before. And he's a guy that oftentimes we don't associate with improved plate appearances with the DH, but he's going to be one of their best hitters.
He'd be one of the big ones,
He's going to be middle of the lineup. He's going to be playing. And remember, in 2020, when he got the 225 plate appearances in the shortened season, they were playing him in the outfield. They were playing him in a lot of different spots. And so he's definitely a guy who could benefit from the plate appearance bump, for sure. He had his lowest BABIP of his career, at 298. Career, he's 314. So that helps explain a little bit of the batting average being down. The skills were relatively similar to where they've been. His plate discipline was actually better, the best that he's ever had. So that's good. Highest max exit velo of his career, second highest barrel by 0.1%, but 11.1% barrel rate. Highest average exit velocity, highest hard hit rate, so again, like, here's a younger guy. He's 29. He's been around for a while. The plate discipline is pretty good, 11% walk rate. It'll probably go up next year just with having worse guys around him. The strikeout rate strikes me as being a little abnormally high for what it should be. I would want to dig in a little bit into that strikeout rate and just see what happened. Guys can get impacted by, more called third strikes, things like that can have an impact on those strikeout rates. So I like Wilson Contreras as well, as a guy who I think is going to get a plate appearance boost, who can contribute across categories. Again, the batting average is a little bit suspect, but he has, like, in the last full season before this, he hit 272 with a remarkably similar batted ball profile to what he has right now. And so, yeah, I mean, the only major difference was a higher strikeout rate, even though, like, contact rate was relatively similar, and a higher home run per fly ball rate that other season. So maybe he hit a few more home runs than flyouts, and those are the types of things that can sway things. So I like Contreras as well. As you can tell, I really like catchers. I like all the people.
It's his position.
I have no criticisms whatsoever for him.
Yeah, Toby likes his catchers, but it'll be interesting with Contreras this year, because, they didn't trade him. They don't want to trade him, apparently. They still could trade him. We'll see how that goes. If he's in the lineup, he should play every day, even with the DH, like you mentioned. What the supporting cast could be interesting. So how well is he a pitch to? Lots of questions there. But we know he's talented. He's young. And the fact he can throw some steals in there does not disappoint me at all. Up next, Eric Haas got you $5.80. And it's pretty impressive, because Haas did it in 98 games and even start the year up with the team, hit 22 homers, hit 231, strikes out a ton. I don't think a lot of this is sustainable. They also got Tucker Barnhart now, so he's catcher outfield eligible. I don't think he's going to be catching as much as he'd like anymore since they got Tucker Barnhart. So doesn't matter this year. You can still use him a catcher. We'll talk about that in the preview show. But he had a heck of a year. I know some people grabbed him off the wire, and it helped a ton because he basically did what Mike Zunino did, but with batting average per se. And it's going to be interesting to see what 2022 brings. But good season for him all around.
Yeah, he had a really good season. He was great to have too. I mean, the Tigers team, they just didn't have the depth, and so he was playing pretty much every single day, which was terrific. And he's, again, like you mentioned, I mean, Zanino's a really good comp just in terms of the strikeout rate isn't quite as bad, but and the power is similar, but maybe not quite as good as Zanino's. I think the challenge with him, like you mentioned, they just added is contextual in a lot of ways. So they just signed Tucker Barnhart, who's a great defensive catcher. So he's going to be logging 2/3 of the games at catcher probably. They still
with
have
that young
2
staff. They're going to want him down there at catcher.
Yeah,
That's big.
And so maybe Haas gets those other plate appearances, but the question is going to be: Are you going to have Haas in the outfield next year? Right? Are you going to have him in the outfield next year on a team that theoretically is going to go out and add a Carlos Correa, and add these other guys? And so I just think that his problem is going to be he's a perfect player for a crappy team that doesn't have depth. And that what gives him value is that the enormous amount of plate appearances that he was able to get compared to other catchers. But now that this team is headed in the direction of becoming more of a contender, they're going to add some offensive pieces. I don't think they have room for him to be that guy this year. And so I just hope folks don't, maybe it's a mistake, maybe it's not. We won't know until next season's over, but I just hope people don't make the mistake of thinking of Haas as being super valuable next year because he played like every day this year. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yep, 100%.
I think that's the thing to be cautious of.
Yep, most definitely. It'll be fun to see where that keeps going as we get through the draft season and start talking about it more in January. Yadier Molina, he's back. Another deal with the Cardinals. He ain't leaving anytime soon. He's going to be 39 in July, but in his year 38 season, he brought you $3.30, hit 11 homers. The power production continues to decline a little bit. The average still is not bad, but it's still going down each year. Something to kind of monitor there. Still not bad. He's just getting older, and he's not playing as much as, well, I guess he hasn't played a ton consistently in a while, but he's still going to play a lot more than other guys. Like when I say that top 10, Yadi bubbles around that top 10 because he's still going to get you a ton of at-bats. That's what Yadi does. It's just older at-bats, and the production's waning, Toby.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's getting to the point where he's becoming a little less useful.
Appealing.
Right? Because the power, he had that one season, and I believed in it. I mean, he had those 2 seasons in 17-18 where he had 38 combined home runs, but he hasn't really touched that recently. And I know having him in a few leagues last year, I mean, he's like the perfect, he's just like, I'm surprised he's not $0. He's like a perfect, like, just blah guy who's just going to blah everything. And he does add a few steals every single season because he's a smart guy. He knows when to take advantage of it, even though he's slow as molasses. But like, he's kind of that guy that falls into the territory of, I used to really want to get him, but now I'm like, there might be a little bit more upside somewhere else,
100%.
And so I might not have as much interest in him as I have in previous seasons. And I think you're right. He is playing less. Like, he was healthy pretty much the full season this year, and he only got to the plate appearances that he had previously gotten in seasons where he was injured. And they pretty much did.
They have that young catcher against Andrew Kisner, or I pronounce it Knizer, who's supposed to be kind of their next Yachty. So it's more of like, okay, keep teaching him Yachty. We're going to play you like 2/3 of the time.
Yeah. So. Yeah. My favorite thing is like Yachty's like one of the best at keeping runners from stealing bases, but Kneisner is like awful at it. And so it's always like the base runners are like, they have their eyes like, just like wide open when Kneisner's back there. He's like, you just want to go. You just want to run against him. Yeah.
So yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see how that keeps going. Like, Yachty's awesome. He's fun. He's going to be a great mentor to anybody that sits back there that wears that catcher's gear. But it's definitely starting to hit that point. I knew he doesn't. You could kind of tell he never wanted to retire. But watching him play now, it's like, dude, go. It's like, I like UFC, and it's like watching certain fighters like retire soon, please. Like stop. You're just gonna hurt yourself here pretty soon. And Yachty's getting to that point where it's okay. It's time to call it. Call it. Let's go. So we'll see where that one keeps going. Next on the list, though, is an interesting one because when you look at ADPs and everything, he's like the 8th catcher off the board in DCs, and that's Tyler Stevenson, who's going to potentially benefit from Tucker Barnhart being out of town. But even last year, playing catcher and first base, he made you $2.50, hitting 10 home runs, hit 286. His bat to ball skills are pretty darn solid. I think that's what a lot of people are looking at. Plus, he walks over 10% of the time. He's walked like almost entire minor career and in the bigs. So really good plate discipline, good bat to ball skills, high BABIP guy. So we'll see if that works. But he's been that way his whole time. So it might be one of those guys. I'm curious what a full season does because he did that in 132 games last year, but only 400 at bats. So it wasn't like he was getting full games. So it'll be curious to see how it plays out this year.
Yeah, he's interesting. Like I look at the profile and I'm kind of like, here's a guy who should swing and miss more.
Yep.
Like, it's a super, like I've seen the guy. I remember he actually hit a home run in the Fall Stars game 3 years ago at First Pitch Arizona. He hit a bomb to dead center, or else maybe it was just a regular game. I can't exactly remember, but like he seems to have power. But then you look at the numbers and you're like, the barrel rate is blah, the max exit velo is blah. Like he seems like the type of guy that needs to have a Joey Votto type of renaissance where he realizes that it's okay to swing and miss a little bit more and give in a little bit more for the power. And so it'll be interesting to see how that develops and whether he has the ability to do that. I mean, the one thing that I'll say just in looking at his rolling average graphs, over his last 40 games, the contact rate did go down. The hard hit rate did go up. The ground ball rate went down as well, which I think is important, down to 40%, which is really nice. So some promising trends there in the kind of end of season data. But again, like in order for him to be, I think, really valuable, yeah, I mean, all around solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what we were talking about. It's kind of like I'd go for Stevenson over Yachty, right? Because I think
but look, they're getting drafted really so far apart, which is crazy.
It's a similar profile. Are they getting how far apart?
Yeah, Stevenson's the 8th catcher off the board, and Yachty's the
20th. He's going high. Yeah,
they're like almost 150 picks apart.
Yeah, and I mean, my only question would kind of be, it depends on how good of a hitter he is, and they're also like selling, and the Reds are selling, so there may be more lineup spots available for him. It'll be interesting to see what that usage is like because you could see, they give him a lot more reps at catcher. He needs a little bit more of a break. He actually doesn't get those games at first base that he would have normally gotten. Or, alternatively, the DH returns and he's a guy who plays DH on a regular basis. I haven't seen anything about what their plans are, but I feel like there's just a broad spectrum of where he could fall in terms of value. And maybe the reason why people are reaching for him, or not value, but like in terms of production. And like maybe the reason why people are grabbing him is they see a guy who's got a very solid foundation to build off of. And there's also a lot of room for upside if he gets additional plate appearances. If, he does hit for maybe a little bit more power. All things that are, in his second real full season in the major leagues would be a reasonable thing to potentially expect.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Stevenson is he's got the bat to ball skills we talked about. He's young. They want to use him quite a bit. And when you look at it last year, he played 23 games at first base. So sure, there was a stretch that Votto spent time on the IL, but with the DH in play, you could definitely see Votto spending more time at DH, maybe moving Stevenson over there, something along those lines. So it's definitely an option to kind of see how that all plays out as it goes with a guy like Stevenson for sure. And just brings I think if you're drafting Stevenson, and again, we'll talk about this more in a couple of weeks, is I think you're drafting on the upside of a young player finding everyday playing time, hitting his peak. That's what you're doing there. Compared to the Yachty, it's like, we know what we're getting with Yachty. We're getting him 100 picks later. It's like, okay, cool. Where Stevenson could take that next step, maybe hit 20 home runs. Like, I'm not saying he's going to. That's a big step, but he could. He could. Where Yachty, I think we'd all be more than shocked, like, forever if he hit 20 home runs. So it gets really interesting in that
This,
respect.
this is really interesting too. If you go to Stevenson's prospect page, on his prospect grades, he's a 65 raw power, but he's a 45 game power.
So he puts on a great show in batting practice, huh?
It seems like, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, like, I don't normally go back and look at that type of stuff, but I wanted to see, does he seem to have that skill? But no, they had him as a 40 in-game power present value, and then future value was 45. And so that doesn't mean he can't get there, but it does mean that his profile kind of coming in wasn't like a masher that maybe you expect when you see the dude. Because when you see the dude, I mean, he's like a big dude, I think. I mean, let's verify. I mean, I don't know what qualifies as a big dude, but he is 6'4", 225.
That's a big dude.
So that's a big dude,
especially
right?
a catcher.
So you expect maybe a little bit more power than you should potentially.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, that was a gem from this podcast, Bubba. I just want to
Yeah.
point that out. I mean, sometimes
played.
things happen. Sometimes
just all
things
comes
happen,
together.
and in the moment, you just know there was just something special about that.
It was great. This is the Stevenson hour. Next up is Christian Vasquez. No, Christian Vasquez. This is where it gets to the fun part, because he started out the year great last year, then he's kind of slowly finished the season. Like, it wasn't anything flashy. It made you $2.20. But what Vasquez does, and this is where it gets to the point: do you take the chance on guys playing 2/3 of the games, or do you play Christian Vasquez, who's going to play nearly every day at catcher? This is the closest thing you're going to get to a guy. He won't ever DH because JD's there, or they'll put Xander or Devers on a day off. Very rarely will Vasquez ever DH, but he played 138 games last year. He played 47 in a 60-game season. He played 138 the year before. He throws in a few stolen bases. Doesn't have a ton of power, though. We saw that one big year. We all kind of knew that was kind of fluky. You're going to get anywhere from like 5 to 10 homers, maybe 5 to 10 steals, decent average, but he's going to play a ton. It's one of those like reliability things. You know, you can put him in your lineup, and if he runs hot, you're great. Otherwise, he's going to get you catcher's numbers. Like, you're going to get it. So what's your thoughts on Vasquez in this past season?
Just thinking about, all those people who said you should just get Christian Vasquez instead of JT Realmuto last year during drafts. That's all I can think about, No, I'm just kidding. Well, it's actually kind of interesting. Like, I'm looking at Fangraphs and I'm sorting the catchers by WRC plus, and he doesn't even show up on the front page. He's at a 77 WRC plus with just the 6 home runs, which is really interesting. I mean, not to be like overly critical of the guy, but like, he had those he had that 23 in 2019, and he hit 7 in 2020, and the home run per fly ball rate was so much higher than it had ever been before. And it almost seemed like the 2020 confirmed that the 2019 was the case. But like, now we're back to, kind of, is he a non-power guy? Is he just more of like a speed guy, batting average guy? It's not a terrible profile. I think it just depends on where, he ends up going. He's going around pick 250 in DCs, which I don't think is terrible, because, I mean, the thing is, power is important, but it's not as important as when we had the juiced ball.
Especially a catcher.
Like
a catcher is not as big a deal.
Yeah, and you can take some lower home run guys now. Not too many of them, but so he's interesting. I mean, he's definitely interesting. I think you kind of know what you're going to get. Again, a guy who has a pretty solid floor, is going to play on a regular basis, and he, and we've seen that there's a little bit of a ceiling there as well for him.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he can ever find that power again and get you a diamond in the rough. I wouldn't plan on it, but we'll see how that goes.
Bubba, know what I can't believe I haven't integrated yet into this is I actually have populated my spreadsheet for the first time with steamer projections, and I haven't even spouting off dollar values of what these guys
because that's for the position preview. Spreadsheet. That's for the preview.
That's for the preview. Yes. This is the thing. I mean, you guys don't know this, but this is like a really long cliffhanger. Yes. Like, you're like, man, you're talking sense about all these guys.
When we're talking about the play, we're teasing you with what we think for 2022, but we haven't got into what we think for 2022. Big difference.
I mean, we're kind of, I think that's big. That's big. We're doing a little different. Last time, I feel like, just to give you guys a little bit of behind the scenes, last year we did the position previews super early, and then we did like the re-previews, the re-reviews or whatever beforehand. But it was like we went into so much depth early on in the season when there were so many contextual factors and other things that, you know, like the March projections and things like that we could incorporate. So we thought it would be more beneficial to kind of go back and go over like what happened, what might we anticipate moving forward, and then we're going to crush it. We're going to absolutely crush it on the previews, like in depth, just cutting edge stuff. Like, you think that Stevenson stuff right there was good? Like,
I'll tell you
what you guys are going to get, I mean, Stevenson's like, he's big. Like,
real
he's
big. Like a big dude. He's a big dude.
225.
Raw power.
Big meat
Raw
Pete.
power.
Big meat Pete the polar bear is a big guy. But Tyler Stevenson, let's
Tyler Stevenson. Like, if they're in a picture together, you can get confused.
Okay, okay, who do you think is a bigger guy?
I think Stevenson's bigger than
Pete Alonso. Okay, let's see.
He's at least taller.
I mean,
Stevenson's taller.
Pete Alonso's a pretty big guy too.
Oh,
he's 6'3", 245. So he's got 20 pounds on Tyler Stevenson, but he's an inch shorter. So
it all equates.
It does. It does. Later on, you guys are going to get we're going to go through and we're going to rank guys on how big they are. You know, like, it's going to be a great show.
If there is a lockout, you guys are in for a world of hurt. That's all I got to say.
And,
if there's no lockout, we can just keep moving the train. If there's a lockout,
we're just going to have different shows about just random.
It's going to get wild.
That's
going to get wild.
6'5", 240? Are you kidding me?
Wow. No. And that dude's, then they got Dustin Pedroia's out there.
I know. My God. Dustin Pedroia from Woodland, California.
That's right.
Yolo County. You only live once, County.
You only live once, County. That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Oh man, I was just gonna say, and we thought we were gonna get through catcher, first base, and
did you see how I changed the thing already?
You changed the name. You can't change the title of the episode, Bubba. You can't change the title of the episode in the middle of it. You're like, I should have known. First base. I
should have known. I should have known. We're just gonna have too much.
Call
fun.
it off.
No,
call it off.
Catchers. We're good.
We bring too much value. I mean, to the fantasy baseball industry to not give these guys their due diligence.
Yeah, we got to go at least 20. Well, it's fun. It's good information. We got to go at least 20 catchers. And the next one, Omar Narvaez. It's $130. Like, these aren't big values, but it's catcher position, not shabby. And he's another one of those guys. You know, he's there for his decent defense, but he can hit the baseball. He hits for a decent average, a little bit of pop, not a ton of pop, but he plays 123 games. He's basically, to me, he's a better Christian Vasquez, just doesn't run. That's the way I would look at it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so many catchers that are like so mediocre. I mean, he's essentially Yadier Molina too, right? He's Yadi.
Yeah.
He's Yadi, maybe without stolen bases, with a higher batting average, I think, higher ceiling.
He's 10 years younger than Yadi almost.
he's 10 years younger too. So I think Narvaez is fine. I think we kind of know who he is. I think if we don't have a juiced ball next year, we're probably not going to see the 22 home runs, which also helps, you know, kind of show why the batting average is going to be lower, you know, without the same level of pop. You know, he plays in a decent lineup in a good ballpark for lefties. So I think he's totally solid, but I don't think he's a guy that you really want to jump after. He is the type of guy, though, I think, where, you know, you may want to look for him if you're light on batting average. You know, if you're light on batting average, and that's what you kind of need more from your catcher than anything else, you know, he's perfectly good for that. I mean, a good example, you know, Jeff Zimmerman and Rob Silver I was listening to their podcast earlier today. Great show as usual, Launch Angle Pod, and Manly Van Lee, and they were just talking about, Jeff was talking about like how he wants more batting average, or like maybe a little bit more of a batting average floor on his catchers. And this is like the perfect guy to fill that in, you know, is kind of solid batting average. He's going to do it. There's nothing in the profile that says that he's not. And the power is not necessarily going to be there, but it's going to be fine. Stolen bases aren't going to be there, but the counting stats are going to be fine. But I don't think they're going to be anything too great. And Manny Pena signed with the Braves, right? So he's gone. So I don't know who their backup catcher is going to be. Probably won't change anything too much, but possibly it could. He could see some time in at DH as well.
He'd be a good DH guy.
He's decent enough. So yeah, something to monitor for sure. Definitely a little bit of upside, solid floor.
Yeah, I took him as my catcher 3 in my FBC 50 because of that batting average asset. Like if everything goes wrong, I can slot him in and just be fine. Mm-hmm. So I like that quite a bit. Now the next catcher off the board, this is interesting because people see Gary Sanchez now in fantasy and they're just like, he sucks. And he's not great. Don't get me wrong. He hit 204 last year, hit 23 home runs. He DHs a bit. He walks a decent amount too, but he still made you over $1. Like it's not great, but at a catcher, he's a top 15 catcher last year, which is pretty crazy to think about because if you had Gary Sanchez, you think he probably buried you. So he's a guy that I've passed on so far. I look at him, I'm like, I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to get my own Narvaez's. I'll get my power elsewhere. But if you like Mike Zunino, this could be Mike Zunino light, or he could catch lightning in a bottle and start crushing it again. He's such a conundrum every year, but his defense is so bad, Toby. It really limits. Like Higashioka continues to get lots of run out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's
tough.
It's kind of brutal for Gary. He hit 183 in the second half.
Yep.
I mean, if you're playing an FBC and you're in an overall, it's really tough to go there. I mean, maybe cheaper version of Zunino. Is he even cheaper though than Zunino?
No, he probably costs more. No,
he's the same.
Yeah, he's about the same. Yeah, they're going right next to each other.
Yeah, he's about the same.
Between those two, Omar Narvaez.
Yeah. He's not a good player. He's not good at anything. And I don't want to be mean. It's not to like take away. He hit 23 home runs as a catcher, but comes with a 204 batting average. I mean, in the last 4 seasons, 204, 147, 232, 186. And yeah, the home runs are there, but you can get home runs in other places that don't hurt you that bad. I mean, even at catcher, like you can probably find you could probably stream your way to 10 to 15 home runs. And I'd rather take that than what you're getting with Gary. He's the playing time's getting cut. He kind of starts to fall into this, situation, which Jeff Zimmerman's done research on and on just like when a guy's just like a bad player, there's a lot of risk with those picks. And he's just not a good player. He's not good defensively. He's got really one stat that carries him now with the power. And it doesn't do enough in the profile. And I mean, you can still keep hoping that, what are we looking back at? Like 1982? Is that the last time he was good? Like, I mean, we're talking like, oh, well, if you go back to 2017, he hit 270. Well, it's like every year since then, he's maxed out at 230. I mean, he's not good. He's just not a good player. I would kind of steer clear of him because Zunino's a good defensive catcher.
Exactly. That keeps in mind where Sanchez can't catch. Like they debated trading him. They debated like, can we find anybody to take him? And no one wants to trade for him. It's bad.
I mean, Gary's 6'2" and 230. He's
not quite a big dude. He's a good size. He's good.
Quite a big dude, but he's solid.
He's solid. Maybe he needs to stand up more in his stance. He crouches so much. Maybe that's the problem.
Oh, man, can we get A-Rod on the show? I mean, he's always got his knees. He's got his leg down, and that's his wild pitch.
Yeah, we're doing it. We're doing A-Rod analytics. He's a big dude.
He's a big guy. I mean, you want him bunting. I mean, if you have a runner on second and there's nobody out, regardless of the score, you want Sanchez bunting. You got to know the fundamentals. That's what's going to win.
Who wouldn't want us in Sunday Night Baseball? I'm telling you, like it just makes too much sense.
It's a really good idea. That's a really good idea.
We got all the ideas on these shows. It's the off season. I got all the ideas in the world.
People want straight shooters. I mean,
yep, we got it.
We talk about it all.
We'll bring, Toby, you can bring the ice cream cookies and all that stuff. Oh, like dude. we got it all.
We haven't even talked about Thanksgiving yet either.
I know we're gonna get there.
I've got a lot of cooking to do the next couple of days.
That's why we started a little bit late. I was finishing helping brine the turkey. So it was.
Oh man, brining the turkey already.
Yeah, you got to get it look at 24 to 48 hours in advance. Oh yeah.
I eat a tofurkey, Bubba.
I know. So you don't have to worry about it.
Tofurkey. I mean, the tofurkey is easy, man. You just baste it. You put a little olive oil, a little soy sauce on it. Is that what? No, or do we?
Soy sauce. I think it's
interesting. No, maybe soy sauce. I I can't remember. It looks like soy sauce. It could be vinegar. I don't know. I don't know what we're doing, but we normally do that. But
Nice. Hey,
and you just
whatever
pop it
works for
in,
people.
surround it with vegetables.
No, that's
You
good.
know,
That's good.
it's not. I wouldn't call it aesthetically pleasing, but
Hey,
it does the
whatever
job.
works.
Once a year.
Like I said on Twitter the other day, everybody do what makes you happy. Let's stop all the
Do it.
slander. It's
I
Thanksgiving.
know. Come
Come
on,
on.
people.
Like
Yeah.
Vlad Sedler finally said it best. I'll let you guys go look at it, but he had a great hashtag.
Yeah.
And it's much better and
Make
smaller than
whatever
what
the
I said.
hell you want to
Yeah,
have it,
pretty
Steve.
much. That's what
Yeah.
it should be. So enjoy. Next up on the catchers list, this one's a guy I love, Elias Diaz. Somehow only made $1 last year, which kind of surprised me, but I guess it's because he only played in 106 games. He played most of that in the second half because Dom Nunez got the run early. Then Elias Diaz established himself and ran with it. 18 homers, 246 average. He's always been a decent average guy.
Mhm.
Powers just fluctuated because playing times fluctuated with him in reality. He got the everyday job. They just signed him to a multi-year deal in Colorado.
Did they? I missed that.
His. I think it was at least a 3-year, $14.5 million extension.
I mean, that's a commitment, right?
So
there.
he's the dude going into the next year. I already grabbed him. I got him, Narvaez, and Grandal in that league. So I'm pumped on that. And I'm going to have way too much Diaz, and I'm ready to get my heart broken. But I love what he's got going on. A full season of him is going to be great to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say a couple things. I really like him. I'm just looking at it. I really like him a lot. The things that I like about Elias Diaz that I'm looking at. First of all, I mean, he's 6'1", 223. He's a little guy. He's a little guy with a big heart.
Big heart.
No, what I like about him is he had a career low BABIP in Coors, so that batting average should go up.
BABIP place, yeah.
It should go up. I mean, he had a 16.2% strikeout rate. You know, super low strikeout rate, makes a ton of contact, decent plate discipline. The batting average should go up. I think the home runs are a little bit fluky. He had 18 home runs on 22 barrels. He had a 16.1% home run per fly ball rate, which is about 6% higher than he has in his career. Now, theoretically, like that could be a Coors issue, although Coors isn't really like it's definitely plus home runs, but it's not that plus home runs. It's more plus BABIP. Mm-hmm. Let me just see here. Let me just see the batted ball splits here. I'm interested to see his home and away home run per fly ball. So they were about equal. Yeah. So I would say I would expect some diminishing returns on the home runs compared to last year. You know, give me like a 12 to 15. But then I think he's much more likely to hit the Steamer projection says it all. 265, 11 home runs, and 342 plate appearances. Maybe you bumped up plate appearances up, you know, because it seems like they're committing to him longer term.
Yeah.
So you're thinking more
probably closer like 450, probably.
Yeah. So you're thinking more like 265, 13 home runs, maybe 45, 55, or something like that, which is very serviceable. And he's going later than any of the guys that we've talked about before. So I like Diaz. I think he's a nice late catcher who, like you said before, like I've always kind of liked the profile because he hits a lot of line drives. He doesn't strike out a lot. He's got a really nice vibe.
Yeah, he's got a great approach, and he goes late drafts. We stream him in past years because of the platoons he played in Pittsburgh so many times. So the fact that it should be his gig, they paid him to make it his gig. I'm pretty pumped on that. I think as drafts go on, he's going to slowly climb up unless something really weird comes out about playing time. So it's going to be hard to pass on that one. We're going to skip over Yan Gomes. He was next on the list, but he's looking for a home. Still a great year. Part of the season in Washington. Finished it in Oakland. What was that?
He's a free agent.
Yes. So he's looking for a home right now. So we'll see where that lands because that'll be really interesting. He played very well when he could play. Just will he play is the question. And we'll go to what was his teammate this past year for the second half of the season, and Sean Murphy, who tilted so many people because he only hit 216. There was higher hopes for that, but his BABIP was low. Still hit 17 homers. He's a StatCast god, if you want to look at that. Like, just jumps off the page, hits the ball extremely hard, does so many things well. disappointed tremendously this past year, but X stats pointed to a different direction. He could be one of those guys that brings the thunder in drafts. Like he's going right after Christian Vasquez right now. He could be an interesting one if you think he kind of rebounds and takes that next step because he's still young. He's 27. So it could be an interesting thing for Sean Murphy.
Yeah, it's interesting. 216 batting average.
Yeah. He struggled because I had him on a few leagues and it was so hard for me to want to drop him because I knew the potential that he brings to that plate. And it was just eventually I had to. It's tough though. It's like if you ever want to know how frustrating Sean Murphy is, follow Scott Jenstead during an A's game. That's all I gotta say. Or listen to him on the Sunday Night Show, which obviously if you listen to this, you definitely listen to him. He's talked about Sean Murphy so many times because he's like the Matt Chapman of catchers for the A's. He crushes the baseball. Results have just been so frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see the challenge for me is I want to see where it's going to get better for him. And I think like the home runs, like he had 17 home runs and 32 barrels. So he was slightly underperformed on that. His home run per fly ball rate was 14.8%. 14.8%. Previously to that, it was, above 20 for, his partial year and then his 2020 season. But the ball also was down. He also plays in kind of the best park for a pitcher in a lot of ways. So there are things that can suppress that. And then, his barrel rate was actually slightly down from 2020, just from a rate perspective. Max EV was pretty much equal right there. He hit the ball in the air a little bit more. So that will drag the average down, theoretically helps the power a little bit. So, yeah, I mean, you could definitely see, again, the projections are brilliant. You just look at it, it's like 228 batting average. So, yeah, he probably underperformed batting average wise, but he's not jumping up into the, really good batting average. But at the same time, like you mentioned, he has the type of profile that could, with the right batted ball luck in a given season, could make a pretty significant jump, right? You could easily see him hitting 25, maybe even 30 home runs, especially if they give him a little bit more run than they did last year. Because I know he was playing more before Gomes came over.
Exactly. They brought Gomes over, I think, because he struggled to start the year. So it's like, okay, we're going to bring Gomes over. We're in a playoff race. We need something back there.
Yeah. And where's he going in drafts?
Right around Christian Vasquez. Like 250-ish, 260.
Okay.
He's intriguing.
Yeah. He's intriguing for sure, but you also pay a premium, Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. By no means
I like
is
Elias
it a must,
Diaz more.
but he's interesting.
I like Elias Diaz's profile more.
I don't hate that. There's a few other guys, like we're not going to talk about him tonight because the next guy is the last guy I'm going to bring up on the show. But, you got your Luis Torrens, which has a little bit of Sean Murphy in him. You got your Max Stassi's that go afterwards. Stassi had a great year considering the injuries he played with, at least to me, he did. You got Mitch Garver. You got a couple other guys where you could see similarities kind of and the riskiness that comes with him also. So
Garver's interesting. I know we have a question. I won't talk about him, but I noticed something interesting about him.
Yeah, he's very interesting this year. Like, there's part we'll talk about Garver in a minute. But I got a lot. I don't have a lot to say right now, but I have some thoughts as well. The last guy I want to mention though, because currently he is the fourth catcher off the board. He's going ahead of Yasmani Grandal, Wilson Contreras, Kyber Ruiz, and others, because he's got outfield catcher eligibility. The one, the only Dalton Varsho, who was the 19th catcher on the player rater for minus $2.40. A lot of that was because of the early part of the year where he was beyond dreadful. Finished the year strong, 11 homers, 6 stolen bases. Steamer doesn't have him projected to play much. I think that's potential to change. Let's be realistic there. But if we say he plays 130 to 140 games, this could be interesting, Toby.
Oh, yeah. It could be real interesting, Bubba. Yeah, I drafted him a bunch last year. I don't know if you remember that, but nice little second.
I left that part out of it.
Nice little second half. I mean, yeah, Varsho is super interesting. I mean, he could be huge. And I also think there's a pretty solid floor because I do think the 433 play appearances is low.
Yep.
Because he can play outfield and he's one of their better hitters, honestly.
Yep.
I think the real concern is like if they continue to platoon him, like I know they sat him versus lefties before for a while there, but they have no reason now to kind of hold back. The profile is pretty solid. Play discipline could be better, but he makes a lot of contact. The batted ball quality, he's got a 119 max exit velo, which is solid, 7.3% barrel rate. 16 barrels he hit last year. He hit 16 barrels and he had 11 home runs. So right about like where you would probably expect him to be, maybe a little bit ahead of that. But, and then the stolen bases, like 6 stolen bases and 315 plate appearances. I think there could be even more. I mean, when we look at his projection from last year, I think it was at 10 or 12 stolen bases. So you could definitely see it, especially in a Diamondbacks team that's going to have to generate some runs, next year. So obviously there's still some question marks, and he's going very high in drafts. But like I think there's good reason for it. So again, like I'm not like in love with it necessarily, but I also can see it.
Yes.
There's
a path to it.
Yeah. I mean, you think about JTR's profile and you think about his profile. And I think they're very similar.
Let me tell you that, because I pulled up the Steamer 600 projections. They're for just the idea. So they had Varsho 142 games, 600 plate appearances, 535 at bats, 24 homers, 11 stolen bases. He had 71 runs, 78 RBIs, 254 average. JTR in the 600s, they still only had him for 125 games, 450 plate appearances, 17 homers, so 7 less than Varsho. 7 stolen bases, 4 less than Varsho, hitting 251. Again, projections aren't correct, and it was about 120, 130 fewer at bats in the projections, because for some reason they have JTR playing a lot less in the Steamer 600. Not sure why, but so if you maybe expand on that, my point is they're very similar. If you make the at bats about the same, they probably line up to be pretty similar.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, if you were to like just do like, what's the chances like that Varsho is better than JTR this upcoming year? Like, is it 20%?
At catchers, it's probably more, because all it takes is an injury. All it takes is an injury, and Varsho plays the outfield.
There's a funky looking Venn diagram that has, situations where Varsho ends up better than JTR. Them being like kind of similar, and then him being better, and JTR is definitely ahead of that.
Yeah,
but there's
JTR's
like some similarities. He's proven, and also like plate appearance wise. I mean, yeah, if you do like Steamer 600 or whatever, but chances are, I mean, JTR, if he's healthy next year, he'll get 600 plus plate appearances as a catcher. And I don't think Varsho's there. Yeah.
I think Varsho's around the 450-ish, give or take.
Yeah.
Which is what the projection showed 530. So maybe cut him back to 20 homers, 8 stolen bases, still hits 250. Like that's
brilliant. Yeah,
at a catcher position, that's outstanding. So and he's going fourth in DCs right now, which to me kind of still surprised me that it was that high. It'll be fun to see where that keeps going as the next couple months chug along here, to say the least.
Yeah.
All right.
And I mean, he's a little guy. He's 5'10", 207. So he's a little guy, but he packs a punch.
He does. He packs a punch. All right, let's do some listener questions for the catcher's position here. We got some from a couple weeks ago, then we had to postpone it because of my schedule, and the ones from today. So we'll do them all on the show.
Yeah, we got about 20.
It's like
are we doing 20 questions?
We might be.
Yes.
We might be, so.
No.
Yeah.
Yes.
The first one's from the one and only Jeff Zimmerman. He says, "What catcher do you draw the line with and don't want anyone after them?"
Oh man, Jeff, you're asking way too complicated questions for this time of year, because I haven't done any drafts. I mean, let's see. Like Perez, I'm fine with. Real Muto, I'm fine with. Smith, Varsho, Grandal, Contreras, Ruiz, Stevenson, D'Arnaud. Rutschman, like obviously, like he could be super, super good, but
I think in a redraft league though, he's not there at ADP.
yeah, I don't know if I could go with him. And also
No.
Kirk, like, I mean, Danny
Yeah,
Jansen
a
was
lot of
kind of good,
questions.
like towards the
They split a
end
lot
of
of
last
time. That's
year.
the
And
thing.
then
A lot of time split.
Moreno is on my dynasty team, so I kind of lean towards him.
Mhm.
Garver, I like. Vasquez is fine. Um,
Then it gets interesting.
Narvaez is fine. I mean, I'm
Mm.
not really into the profile of like the Murphy, Haas, Zanino.
Yep.
Narvaez is fine. I don't like
You
Sanchez.
like Elias Diaz is down
Kelly,
there.
I have to dig in a little bit more. Yachty as like a very far backup option. So I'd say like maybe Diaz right there.
For
I got to dive in a little bit more into because I know like even Jacob Stallings is decent.
he's
Tucker
decent in a
Barnhart
deep league if you need him. Yeah.
is decent. So I don't know if it's necessarily drawing a line, but I generally like to have two of the better ones. So
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if I got beyond Elias Diaz, but stranger things have happened.
Yeah, like Max Stassi, I like, but like I don't like James McCann. I like Elias Diaz. I'm with you. I think I could go as deep as like a Max Stassi, but there's probably 5 or 6 guys ahead of in the grouping ahead I wouldn't take. So I'd probably take, let's say, 13 of the top 24 or something along those lines. I'd like to try to get them. Like if worse comes to worse, like you mentioned, Jacob Stallings, Barnhart are there. I'd prefer not to if we had that choice. But I definitely wouldn't be going past Max Stassi, to say the least. I'd prefer to get one of the guys up top, as you mentioned. All right. The next question on the dock here from Ryan Roof. He says, who are the fill out your roster catchers to target at the end of DCs?
Oh man, end of DCs. Fill out your roster type guys.
Nick Fortes of the Marlins.
Go you go ahead. You go ahead.
I think Nick Fortes of the Marlins is a good one because Alfaro might get the start, but last year they put Alfaro in the outfield. They like to let Fortes go. So I'm curious to see where that continues on. I like guys like Austin Hedges. It's his gig. At least he should be starting more often than not. And these are just like your fourth catchers. Like these are the guys you're hoping to not have to use, basically. But these are the end games, as he mentioned. A couple others way deep down here. I always have a nice liking to Higashioka because I feel like Gary Sanchez's days are numbered. So he's a free one. Luis Capusano of the Padres got a lot of run in September. So he's another guy. And then if you're not worried about overall production, a guy like Martin Maldonado, he plays all the time. He's going to get you at bats. So there's other guys back there, but those would kind of be closer to my in game options. I prefer not to have to go that deep though. Like I already have, I took 3 early, like I said. I might take a 4th, or I might just roll the dice with 3. We'll see, because I like my 3. So my goal is to not go too deep.
Yeah, I haven't done any DCs yet. So, and I really need to dive into the back end of the player pool in terms of catchers. I actually like the 2 Rangers catchers.
Mm-hmm.
Jonah Heim, I think thinking back from last year, has a really nice profile. I'm also been a big fan of Jose Trevino for a while. How they end up splitting the job, will be interesting. You mentioned Campusano. Like there's some guys that are really interesting if they get the run, but it's always challenging to find out whether they're going to do that. I'm just kind of scrolling through here.
One more I want to mention that gets my attention is Kurt Casale of the Giants, because does Joey Bart get the early run or not? Casale could get some run because they liked him there. They used him a lot, and he actually produced. Might not play every day, but it could be more interesting than you think if Joey Bart struggles.
Mm-hmm. Casale's been relatively solid too. I mean, Wilson Ramos, like, is he going to be the catch?
He's got to find a job. He's got to find a job. Cleveland DFA'd him last year.
Oh, did they?
Yeah.
Did they? Okay.
That's the problem. I'd love him.
What I know.
Well, I'd love him if he was there. I'm 100% with you. I just don't know where he's going to play.
Because I know they didn't pick up the option for Perez, so he's gone.
Yeah. Riley Adams is another one, but I love Cabby Ruiz. So
yeah, Cabby Ruiz is cool. Yeah, I'm into him.
There's Andrew Kisner, if you're into that.
Yeah, not that into it.
Yeah.
Cal Raleigh, what? I'd be interested in the in seeing what that is playing situation.
The Mariners have a lot of catching options.
Yeah, they also I mean, Raleigh sucked when he was up, but he was really freaking good
Mm-hmm.
in the minors. And so, again, it can take some time for guys to adjust. But, if it looks like he's going to get some run in Seattle, I'd be kind of interested in poking around him.
Yep.
And there's also other interesting guys like Gabriel Moreno has just been tearing the cover off the ball, everywhere he goes. He's great. It's never good when your O swing is higher than your ground ball rate.
Not good at all
for Raleigh. So I don't know. Yeah, it's rough out there. I haven't done the research that I need to really dig in because I haven't gotten to the DCs. And generally that's what the DCs help prepare me for is I'm like, oh, I gotta take a third catcher here. Which direction am I gonna go?
Yep, for sure. Mr. Cutline Master himself, Cujo Curtis Jones asks, Toby, are you sticking with your early catcher strategy? It has certainly paid off the last couple of years.
I probably it depends. I mean, I think there are some guys like I'm trying to be a little less rigid than I have been in the past around some things. Like, so I'm going to see how the ADP shuffles out. But chances are I will. I mean, I probably have a lot of JTR just because I think he's going to go later in drafts than I think he probably should. I'll have a little bit of Sal, maybe not that much though, just because it's so hard to pick a catcher, who doesn't steal bases at that point in time in drafts. But God, I love him. I'll have some Varsho for sure. I could see myself having some Will Smith. I think he's all around solid, but I might maybe not, just because he doesn't really stand out in any one particular place. I can see myself having a lot of Grandal and Contreras and Kybert Ruiz for sure. Yeah, D'Arnaud, Garver, maybe.
All right. The Little Book of Calm asks, Steamer 2022 projects only 3 catchers to hit 22-plus homers, Salvi, Grandal, Will Smith, and 3 more to hit 20 to 22 homers. That would be, I'm looking at it right now, Realmuto, Contreras, and Sanchez. They also project exactly 1 catcher to play 130 games or more, and that is Salvi. Who are some other guys that you could realistically fall into enough playing time to reach the 20 home run threshold? I kind of talked about some of those guys earlier. Like Zunino's only projected for 17. I think 20 is very reasonable. Mitch Garver. I'm a Max Stassi believer. I might be foolish there, but I think if he plays enough, he's got the power to do it. There's a handful of catchers. Sean Murphy for sure. I don't know if Kyber's power is there just yet, but it wouldn't surprise me. I think he's that good. You mentioned Varsho earlier.
What about Carson Kelly?
You said you have to look at him more. I need to look at him more too. If they dedicate catcher to him and let Varsho play the outfield, I'm more involved. I'm terrified of what Carson Kelly's playing time looks like with Varsho maybe playing both.
Yeah, I don't know if he gets there.
Yeah. Now the DH could be big again because that could put Varsho at DH or whatever because they need hitters. Kelly's still one of their better hitters too, so that could play into it also.
Rough.
D-backs are gonna be rough. So
yeah,
buckle up. But there's probably a good, I'd say 5, 6, 7 more guys we could realistically see hitting 20 this year. It's the catcher's position though. Like you just have to always know that they're one weird bounce away from an IL stint.
So Pedro Severino's on the Brewers.
Pedro Severino, last time I checked, didn't have a job yet, unless they signed him recently.
Severino signed a 1-year, $1.9 million contract with the Brewers.
I like that because
2 days ago,
the Orioles DFA'd him. So that's interesting. That's a good backup to Narvaez. That's a good lefty hitter.
Yeah.
Or against a lefty, pitcher. Give Narvaez a breather. So that's a good backup for them.
Interesting. Yeah, I was just kind of trying to roll through and see. I think the most likely chance that you get like a guy who just kind of bursts out on the scene is, I think your best bet is one of these rookie guys. If they fall into more playing time. So guys like, Raleigh or Campusano or Moreno or Rutschman. If Rutschman plays the full season, I mean, I don't know what that looks like. But Danny Jansen, I mean,
yeah, Kirk's going to take enough at bats. That's my only concern. Yeah. We've been Jansen believers here for a while, Toby. It's just I don't know if the playing time's going to be there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Because Kirk can hit. That's the one thing with Kirk. He can hit. It's just they platoon those guys so much.
Yeah.
So we'll see. That's the biggest thing with catcher in general. Like Yan Gomes could hit 20 home runs. He just doesn't play enough. That's how a lot of these guys are. They just don't play enough. So will be quite interesting. MS at SMMS79 says, I know you guys don't frequent shallow one catcher leagues, but any merit to the idea of just waiting until the last round in such a format? Same with waiver leagues. Just seems like a waste of draft capital after the first 5 to 7 guys. I'd say if you don't get one of the top guys, I have no problem waiting in a one catcher league.
Totally. Yeah. No. Yeah, I think that's fine. Like, let me just see something. I'm going to run something real quick. So I just put in the auction calculator. I changed it to one catcher, 5x5 league, 12 teams. You essentially have Salvi still is $31. JTR is $16. Grandal is $14. Will Smith is $13. Contreras is $11. Varsho $7. Everybody else is below $5. And there's 10 guys within $5 of each other around there. Yeah. So I think that's a good way to just figure out how might the value of these guys shift a little bit. So I think there's still value in one catcher leagues of the top notch guys. I think they lose some value for sure, but they're the separators. They're the difference makers. And that's what matters. Like the fewer number of teams there are in a league, the fewer number of catchers there are that you draft. You're looking for guys who truly separate themselves. And those guys still do that. So,
yep. The elite are the elite, and then you get the pool of the rest of them is what it comes down to. So at Rev DeBone, he asks, Orioles held off on calling up Adley in 2021, but it feels like he'll get a significant time in 2022. He should, because they have no active catchers on the 40-man roster right now. Steamer has him hitting a robust 260 in 386 plate appearances, which could be a high with 15 homers. Where are you comfortable drafting him? And do you think he'll be drafted as a catcher 1 in 15 team, 2 catcher leagues in by the time the main event rolls around? If it's his job, yes, he will. That's what I'll say. Because the main event's in March. By then, you should have an idea of if he's going to play or not.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I agree. I was a huge Matt Wieters fan, and I hate to throw that out there again.
He had some
fun.
With
catchers, it can be slow. It can be a slow adjustment period. So I probably won't be all over him. Yeah, I probably won't be into him, but I could definitely see it. Yeah, if they indicate that he's going to get the majority of playing time that next season. Yeah.
Yeah, I probably won't have any Rutschman or Bart this year. And I believe either of them could do really, really well, or they could have a slow go. I wouldn't be shocked either way. I really wouldn't. But that's just my stubbornness in drafting. I don't take a lot of chances. That's just what I don't do. But I will acknowledge they're both offensively very, very gifted ball players. So would not be shocked either. Now to the questions from today, Toby. Those were last questions. Now today. Ben Tidd, our buddy at Breaking Ben _T says, if you don't draft Perez or JTR, do you think it's better to just wait on the position? And do you think Will Smith will be worth the top 100 pick? Well, he's going top 100 already. And I think Toby already kind of said you still want some of the big boys up top.
Yeah, I still want some of the big boys up top. I could still see myself taking them. I love Grandal, Contreras. I think the thing with Will Smith for me is you look at last year, he had 500 plate appearances. He's likely to get a similar number. And so the question becomes, what do I see changing? Because what was his value at?
He was like $20, give or take. I had Rasball had Will Smith at $20.50, third best.
Okay.
just behind JTR.
So I think I'd want to look at like, let's see, would that make him? That made him like the 68th most valuable player, according to Razzball. So I think what I'd want to just see is like, okay, take a look at that profile. What do I see changing? It seems like it was a pretty fair line that he got. And so it seems like he is kind of right about, I think his ADP is like 75 so far. He's like right about where he should be going, where he should be valued. And then the question becomes, are there guys going later on that are values, quote unquote values, right? In terms of like projection and cost. And I would say I think Contreras and Grandal, I would feel better that those guys would meet their draft cost and or exceed that draft cost than I would Smith, only because I think there's a limit on the batting average for Smith because of the fly ball profile. And he's not going to steal bases.
Yeah.
The power is
where it's
great. It's legit, but I also feel pretty good that like Contreras will have a bunch more plate appearances and will probably hit 20 to 25 home runs. Yeah. And steal some bases and the negligible difference in batting average. So again, like I think there's justification for all those guys, but I think at that point in time, and then you're like, well, what if I wait and I get Elias Diaz there as like kind of a batting average cushion at a position where not a lot of that exists, Yep. So those are some of the considerations I think that would go through my head as I thought through that.
Yeah, I'm Team Grandal, so we're going to have some fun with that one. Dynasty Junkie has a question, the Mitch Garver question. I think Mitch Garver has real sleeper potential that comes from a lack of plate appearances in 2021. What potential outcomes are in store for him? I 100% agree. Like 2019 was awesome. He played 93 games and hit 31 homers. I'm not saying that, but when we want to talk about a guy that can crush baseballs, and, he was banged up last year, last 2 years, prior to that 273, 268 average. I think we can get like 240 to 250 with a ton of power.
Yeah. So during this exercise, I have the catchers up in Fangraphs. I have like catchers up and I changed the plate appearances to 200 and I sorted by WRC plus. And guess who the third best catcher by WRC plus?
He had a 137 WRC plus last year. That's outstanding.
A 137 WRC plus. Now that doesn't equate to fantasy relevance necessarily.
But it does give you a lot, though.
It does give you an indication of what is possible with him.
In only 68 games, that's outstanding.
Yeah, I mean, it's all pretty good. It's all pretty good under the hood for him. He's got great place discipline, pretty strong contact rate overall. He mashes. His career home run per fly ball is right around 20%, which is what it was at kind of last year. The K rate went up dramatically, but I guess I kind of see it. I kind of see that. But I think the major question for him, though, is going to be, and he hit 250, so that's certainly possible. His career batting average is 256, which is weird. Steamer's got him at 233.
Yeah, I don't believe that Steamer projection at all.
I mean, I think the challenge with him is they've never let him catch more than 1 out of every 2 games.
Yep.
Like even when he was mashing that season, it was 1 out of every 2 games. And it's just hard. I mean, I guess it's not that hard. Actually, I'll take that back. It's not that hard if he's going like late in drafts, which I think he's going.
He is going late in drafts.
So it's worth a shot.
Well, going on pick 240.
240. Yeah. So, I mean, it's kind of fine. You just got to, I think that's the thing is everybody's like, they saw that 2019 and they were just like, oh, that's so good. If you project that out to 450 or 500 plate appearances, I mean, this is just brilliant. But I just don't see that happening. They don't seem comfortable with it. And he hasn't been healthy. So why kind of push him? Especially, I mean, maybe the Twins will be good next year. I doubt it, but maybe.
Yeah, that's my biggest concern. I don't doubt the talent. I don't doubt the production possibility with him. It's do they play him? They still have Ryan Jeffers, so they love his defensive skills. He hits for a good average. Like he obviously doesn't have the power, but Garver, but he doesn't crush their team when he's out there. They have so much other power on that roster, especially if Kirilloff stays healthy and produces. You put maybe a healthy Buxton out there, which is always a big if, but Polanco and Donaldson's still out there. And Sano, like, they got options when it comes to power. They don't have to have Garver. They want that defense, though, for the pitchers. That's where the problem comes into play with Garver. If we knew we were getting 2/3 of the starts, that would be amazing. That's the question. That's the tough part we have to deal with.
He's 6'1", 220. He's a bit of a tweener, you know. He's not he's not a big guy.
He's a solid guy.
He's not a big guy. He's not a little guy. He's
a solid guy.
He's kind of a guy.
Yeah, he's a guy. He's a jag.
He's a guy.
Yeah. Ryan Roof has another question for us. What happens in a draft and hold if you draft JTR and Varsho and both get hurt? Would you start your shitty backups or take the 0? Michael Simeone says, I second this because I started my injured players to not damage my team last year.
I just abandoned the team, honestly. I just never touched that team again.
You cursed.
Bad
cursed.
News. Bad news. I mean, you know, it's just a question. I think you gotta, like, if they're out for the full season and you're going to take 2 full 0s from your catcher positions, I mean, that's honestly, tough. Like, if that happens, like, you're in really rough shape in a DC. I mean, there's no if fans are out.
No matter if they're good or bad, you need them.
Yeah, and also, like, yeah, you're taking a set. Like, even if you put your other guys in, I mean, chances that they actually are solid contributors. Like, what would you probably average out? Like, they're probably would average 220 with, 25 runs and 25 RBIs and 5 homers and 0 stolen bases. Like, you take that at 2 slots in a DC and you're pretty much out of luck. So yeah, maybe you just sit him because you're like, I'm screwed in the counting stats, but then you're screwed in the counting stats and you're kind of screwed in the league. So, I mean, it's the same situation that happens. Like, it doesn't have to be JTR or anybody else. Your top 2 catchers both get injured in a DC and you're kind of screwed. It's just, those are the breaks.
Yep. Yeah. Those are the breaks. That is for sure. Andrew Poplin asks, general DC question for rounds 20 to 30. What's a balance between at bats and depth? Say you have 2 guys at first base, but only 1 at third base. You're on the clock. Do you grab a third baseman who is worth less SGP wise with another first baseman who is higher in your SGP ranks and has more projected at bats? Do you grab the at bats or do you prefer the depth? Great question.
It's a great question. Yeah. I mean, I think it's so contextual and in that moment when you're drafting, because my general rule of thumb, which I need to actually make sure it's my rule of thumb, but I'm pretty sure it's my rule of thumb, is I want to be 4 deep at all of the infield positions. I want 3 or 4 catchers. I want to be 4 deep at each infield position. I think I want 10 outfielders. I know I want 24 pitchers, I think is what I want. It's 24 pitchers. I don't know if that all calculates, I think it depends. But and it also depends on like for me, SGP or the dollar value is not, it's not like the be all end all. There are people who are like, this guy is $11.30 and this guy is $11.15. I will 100% of the time go with the $11.30 guy. For me, it's much more like the difference between a guy, literally the difference between a guy being an $11 guy and a $9 guy is like 1 stolen base and 1 home run.
Yeah.
And so when you're kind of at that similar tier, I would take a step back and I'd be thinking I always want to be hammering plate appearances, especially this year, I think. When there's just so much platooning happening, I definitely want to be hammering plate appearances. So it all depends on who are the guys that are in there? Do I have injury concerns about the guys that are in there? But in this specific example, it would really depend, but I'd probably lean towards, if it's a plate appearance versus depth, there's a guy who's going to play 100% of the time. And there's a guy who's going to play 66% of the time, 67% of the time. I'll go with the 100% of the time guy. I'd much rather do that than go with the 67% of the time because chances are later on in draft, I can get a guy who's going to get me 50% versus 67%,
Yep.
Or else maybe I just make a mental note I've now got 2 guys in that position who I feel like are going to be definite starters, or I have 3 guys in that who can play that position who I think are like 100% starters. Maybe I don't need to get the 4th guy on that position until later on in the draft. Maybe I'm going to get, I'm going to target 2 third basemen who are like in the strong side of the platoon, but maybe have the talent to like be the next one. So again, like there's so many different moving parts on there. There's so many, like with every single one of those decisions. I don't think there's a cut and dry answer necessarily, but I do think that like I am not like, I don't look at them and think like, oh, there's a $1 difference between these 2 guys, so I'm always going to go with this guy. I think it's much more about like what your team looks like, and and even like at that point in time, you got to be looking at what does the profile of the player look like compared to what I need. Who meets that more. So there's all those different things going on in your head, and the challenge is like at some point you have to press the draft button and make a decision about like what works. So I know that didn't like answer your question specifically, but hopefully it gives you a sense, at least in my mind, of like what are some of the considerations you want to be thinking about there beyond just kind of what was in the question.
Yeah, for me, it's quality of depth that you're looking to take and what depth is left over if you don't take it, compared to just taking this guy because he's really good, but I might not even use him that much if all things work out well. So I think you got to kind of weigh it out, like you said, contextually with your team, how the draft's going. It kind of depends on that mark. But I'd say more often than not, when you're around 20 through 30, I'm still looking at quality depth at that point, I would think, especially at certain positions like in the infield. It gets really interesting where things are going. So that'd be my 2 cents, just thinking out loud. Less than Dave McDonald asks, well, we've already talked about his love for JTR, so we got that. What catchers could have top 5 round value this year, especially with especially with an NLDH other than JTR, Sal, and Smith? I think we kind of both think Grandal and Contreras.
Grandal, Contreras, Varsho.
Yeah, those seem to be the main ones that could have top 5 round value.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned Kybert Ruiz, briefly. Like,
I love
the
him.
profile, super interesting. I mean, it's a really interesting. Like, I mean, let me just take a look at it right here since I haven't taken a look at it. But like, dude's gonna strike out like 10.
He doesn't strike out at all. That's why I took him at FPAS. I love Kybert
270 batting average. I mean, you could see it. You could see the right things happening where he hits, instead of hitting 270, he hits 280, 290.
15 plus homers,
450 to 500 plate appearances. Yeah, he's at 17 for 387.
Yeah,
so you could see it getting above 20 there.
He's gonna have Soto and like Turner and stuff in front of him. Or not Turner, Soto and
that's it.
I can't remember who else, but yeah, he's got options there. So
Josh Bell, like you could easily see him hitting in the middle of that lineup. They're so bad. Like, I mean, he's got the Lane Train or Lane.
Yeah, that's
Thomas,
what it was. Lane Thomas. That's what I was thinking of. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we're scraping bottom of the barrel where we're talking about Lane Thomas here, but yeah, I could see Kybert taking that next step. I mean, d'Arnaud, like we've seen the potential, for him, most certainly.
I think it's. I don't think it's too much deeper than that unless some guy comes out of nowhere. I think it's like Grandal, it's Contreras, it's Varsho. I think that's because we're talking about top 5 round value. Like these other guys might be top 10 round value for sure, but top 5, that's still a pretty large area of your elite infielders, outfielders, pitchers to dive into that top 5 as a catcher's pretty good. And then his other question was your favorite late target. We talked about that, probably like the Elias Diaz's of the world for now until more shows up. We do it with Jeff's question earlier. All right, at SMMS79 asks, Betts gets second base eligibility in Yahoo. Would that entice you to target any higher than you would normally in an NFBC, places where he is strictly outfield? So the fact he gets second base eligibility, would he move up your list for you?
Maybe a little bit, but honestly, like second base is pretty nice.
It's already pretty nice and deep. My biggest thing is he won't move up enough because the guys ahead of him are still better than him. It's not like he's going in like in round 6, like move up to round 4. He's either a late first, early second. So I'm not really budging him up too much over like, do you put him over like Jose Ramirez. No. Like stuff like
Yeah.
that. So are you putting him over? The debate's been Kyle Tucker already. Do you put him over Kyle Tucker? Do you take him over one of the elite pitchers? Probably not. So that's for me at least.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think I don't think it adds that much. More in like a draft champions or something like that, but yeah.
And then he had another question. Early ADP in NFBC has Varsha going as high as 78. If he sits around top 100 ADP, do you think you'll have any shares? I think you said yes.
I think so. I have his ADP in draft champions through 9 drafts. It's 110.
That could be that's pretty reasonable with the expectations.
Yeah, my SGP spreadsheet has him right now at 102nd at $15. So, right now he's a slight value, but if he pushes up pretty far, probably not. Unless I got some sort of signal in like spring training that, they planned on playing him in 6 out of 7 games each week or something like that. Like just sitting him once a week, starting him at catcher, and then having him play center field or something like that in other games.
Yep, that would change things a ton. The last question we have here is from Tim Wyatt. Are there any catchers worth drafting in the top 100 besides Perez, JTR? We've answered that as well. So, yeah, we got a lot of top 100 guys. A lot guys are looking for the next JTRs and Salvies. And like we said, there's probably, 3-4 options is what we're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I'll say is my SGP spreadsheet right now, the only guys that has his top 100 guys are Salvi, JTR, Yasmani Grandal. It actually has above Will Smith at 94, and then Dalton Varsho's at 102, and Wilson Contreras is at 108. So again, there's some competition for those spots, and there's some love for Yasmani Grandal right there.
It's always good to see love for Yasmani Grandal.
Oh man, there's
always a fan.
Warms my heart more.
Well, that'll wrap us up. Catcher review on the books next week. I won't even be ambitious. We're gonna do first base next week. I'm not gonna go over the top. We're going first
hour
base.
And 40 minutes of catcher, ladies and gentlemen. This is the one place you can come to get an hour and 40 minutes of catchers. In-depth analysis.
Some places want to skip catchers. No, we go an hour and 40 minutes reviewing. We're not even previewing. Reviewing. Wait till the preview.
Oh man, the preview is gonna be nuts, dude. Yeah. It's gonna be nuts. It's gonna be like 4.5 hours.
So final thoughts, Toby, as we head into the Thanksgiving weekend.
Well, no, I mean, I think I enjoyed that a lot. Yeah, it was good. I hope that was helpful for people. Let us know what you think about the new format. Like, is it helpful for us to do these like reviews and kind of go back? I found it to be really helpful as somebody who is not in as deep of the draft prep process as I previously maybe would have been at this point in time in the season. So that's been really helpful. Thanksgiving, I hope everybody has a nice, long holiday weekend. And enjoy the food. I know that some people don't like the food, and that's fine, but I love the food. Bubba, do you have some what are you going to eat?
Turkey. Just we don't do anything too crazy. I think we're gonna have some potatoes, a salad, some green beans, some pies. Gonna go pick up some pies tomorrow.
What kind of pies?
At the bakery? There's this it's not just a basic pumpkin. It's like a specialty pumpkin they make at this bakery. And then an apple crisp.
Ooh,
with some cinnamon. So
just a little vanilla ice cream on there.
Yes, very, very good. And then some homemade whipped cream for the pumpkin. Just a little bit of all that. So nice. That's kind of what we're doing. What are you doing?
Well, I'm really excited about one thing, which is I'm gonna make homemade apple fritters.
Ooh, that's your favorite donut. We talked about this.
It's my favorite donut. I mean, it could honestly be earth shattering. Like if this works well, this could be a real game changer. I'm really excited. I found a recipe. It's got 5 stars, over 100 reviews. So I'm really feeling good about it. But yeah, going to make a sweet potato casserole, some mashed potatoes. I mentioned the tofurkey. Mm-hmm. What else am I making? I'm making some veggie stuffing, some mushroom gravy.
Yeah,
We
my
do
wife.
some salmon as well.
That'll be good. My wife makes a bomb stuffing from scratch. I forgot about that. We already
Man.
we get sourdough rolls, and she chops up the sourdough, so it's not just like it's. I was
Is
never a big
sourdough the
stuffing.
way to go?
It's so good.
Oh
It's because
man,
it still keeps it like kind of soft, so it's not super crunchy, and but it's not soggy. It's a weird dynamic, but it's. I was never the biggest guy. She found this recipe like probably 5-6 years ago. I love it. Love it.
Interesting.
Probably one of my favorite parts of the meal.
Because my recipe called for sourdough, but I don't like sourdough bread, so I just went with like a French bread. That
It
I'm gonna
should do.
do.
It should do something pretty similar. It's the same concept.
Is it more for the It's more for the texture.
I think
than
it's
of
more the texture.
sourdough.
I think it's more the texture, but the French
and
is
the density,
similar.
maybe.
Yep.
The density.
Yep.
Because
Because then you put some gravy on it, and then it soaks it up.
Man,
Yeah.
some mushroom gravy, dude.
Yeah,
Just,
there you go. There you go.
man.
Yeah, the one thing I'm nervous about, and if you're still listening, thank you everybody. But my wife gave me the go ahead. She's like, "Why don't you try to cook it on the Traeger this year?" And I'm like, "You understand if this goes wrong, we're like ordering Chinese food, right?" And she's like, "Yeah, let's give it a shot." So I'm like, "Okay." I haven't had everything else I've ever cooked on there's turned out fine, so I'm not that worried about it. But I'm still a little worried, knowing we have like 9 people from family coming over, and this could go horribly wrong. So we shall see.
I'm always amazed at like how long, like what a thing cooking turkey is. You know, like it's
We had
long.
the cheat code. Like the thing on the Traeger is supposed to be like 4 to 5 hours. We had the cheat code though. When we got married, we were registered at Macy's, one of the places we are registered at, and we had took stuff back, and they had one of the countertop like oven things or roasting ovens.
Huh.
So we got one of those. We cook our turkey in that every year in an hour and a half.
Wow.
It's the greatest thing ever.
That's amazing.
People thought it wasn't done before, and it's perfect. So you don't have to like stress about it all day. You don't have to use your oven. You just put it on the countertop. Done. It's amazing.
No, what we got that I love is an air fryer.
Those are awesome,
yes. Dude. For veggies, it's
we
glorious.
Do our Brussels sprouts
more
and stuff
like
in
just
there.
Like you know, putting it like having to fry it like or whatever.
Yep.
You know, put it in the.
You know what I think? You know what I think you. You know what I think you would like, and I can't believe we're still recording this. We got them for our daughter, and we started to like them now because we wanted something healthier for her. Is they at Costco near the tater tots? They have vegetable tots.
Really?
They're made of like sweet potato, carrots, and a couple other things, but they're so we throw them in the air fryer, crisp them up in there, and we'll have those instead of like tater tots or something. So she gets like the healthiness of all the real vegetables. I think you would love it.
That's a great idea. I'm always looking for ways to get my kids to eat vegetables.
Yeah, they're phenomenal.
Or not really fruits, but vegetables. Yeah.
Yeah. But all right, we'll wrap it up there.
Have a great Thanksgiving, Bubba, and everybody who's listening. Thank you for bearing with us here.
Yeah, thank you.
I hope you got some cooking tips.
There you go.
If there is a shutdown, if there is a lockdown, we will move into our cooking show.
Yeah, just wait, folks. It's going to get good. It's going to get real good. But I hope you guys all have a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully the Toby G family has one as well. But we'll be back with you guys next week, First Base Edition. Again, let us know if you have questions, ways to make it better for you. We're here to help you guys out. But I'm with Toby. It was fun kind of recapping and talking about guys that we'll dig in even more on when we talk about the previews later on. But this was Bubba and the BatFlip, episode 102, your catcher review for the 2021 fantasy baseball season. Catch you guys later.